Hello everyone, it's great to be bringing you this Wednesday word for Wednesday the 28th of July. My name is Liam and at the time of recording this I'm in Romania, sadly suffering with 29-degree heat and sunshine. Do pray for me. My fiancée Roxana is Romanian and we are staying at her parents' house. I apologise for any background noise like music or dogs, but I am recording this outside, so apologies for that. Today I'm hoping to briefly discuss a Bible passage and then talk a little bit about my own journey. I'd like to start by reading 1 Kings chapter 19 verses 11 to 13 for us in the New Living Translation. Starting at verse 11. "Go out and stand before me on the mountain," the Lord told him. And as Elijah stood there, the Lord passed by, and a mighty windstorm hit the mountain. It was such a terrible blast that the rocks were torn loose, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, there was a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, there was the sound of a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his cloak and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And a voice said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" This conversation between God and Elijah comes after Elijah has been expressing his frustrations and his despair in the previous few verses. Here, God recognizes that Elijah needs an encounter and speaks to him in a way that Elijah doesn't expect. Wow, a sudden earthquake out of nowhere. That's got to be God speaking, right? Well, we'll come back to that. First, a little bit about my own experience. I was baptised on the 30th of November 2008 in the Cooper and Jordan Pool by then St Thomas's minister, Richard Taylor. I had been going to church for a couple of years, I was part of Aldridge Youth Fellowship, and I'd been encouraged by many other Christians that getting baptised was an important way to express and confirm your faith. I still stand by that and would encourage anyone who is not yet baptised to explore that in their walk with Jesus. So, as part of getting ready to be baptised, as part of the preparation, there were various conversations with the minister at the time, and I went on a baptism preparation course. I had built up my expectations such that when I came out of the water, after having been baptised, there would be my own shining light moment, revelation moment, where something would suddenly be switched on and I would see signs, wonders, miracles everywhere with very little extra effort from myself. So the baptism time came and I got into the pool and was baptised. Was there a significant moment that happened right there and then? Well, in a way, yes. I was with godparents, family, friends, people from church, celebrating that I had been baptised, celebrating my faith, and had been baptised into the church family, the church community. As a result, I felt closer to God, knowing that I had taken a step of faith, getting into the pool in the first place. I felt that I was recognising the impact God had on my own life. But what happened next? Well, I must admit, I figured that, like I said, things would instantly be different, and there would be more moments like Elijah had experienced. You often hear in sermons or times of sharing in church about moments where God has really demonstrated something to someone through a clear message or a very obvious sign. See the film Bruce Almighty for some good examples of that. But actually, there are different ways that God speaks to us. On one hand, yes, God can sometimes give us a very clear message in a way that's quite obvious to us. But more often than not, it's through other ways. It's through these gentle whisper moments that Elijah experienced. Moments where we don't expect God to speak to us, but he does. Sometimes, for me, I find it really helpful to be somewhere quiet, whether that's here in rural Romania, whether that's at my mum's house in the Devon countryside, or whether that's just walking through a park somewhere, even on the way to work. In these times, I feel closer to God. It might not be God setting a tree on fire as I walk past, but it might be just seeing a part of nature and saying, wow, look at that thing that God has made, isn't that amazing? Sometimes it might be driving along in the car. It might be God saying something to me, and reflecting on something that I did, or I said, or I could have done. It could be an opportunity for me to pray about a worry. Whatever the situation is, in these different moments, we need to allow space for God to talk to us. Sometimes God isn't in the wind or the earthquakes or the fire, in those big moments that we're expecting, but sometimes it's in the still small voice, in the whisper that Elijah experienced. I don't know about you, but I found that as a result of COVID, the way that I structure my day and week has been quite different. I've reflected on how I spent my time. The lack of a 45-minute commute each way into Birmingham certainly means that I've got more time on my hands than I normally have. But now things are starting to get back to normal, starting to go back into the office. Now that I'm starting to commute again, I'm considering how I use that time. I'm finding most times I do go into work on the bus, that the bus is empty or there's very few people there. There's very little else going on to disturb me. So it's very easy, very tempting to just get the laptop out, fire off a few emails. But equally, this could be time spent praying or listening to God. This could be an opportunity for me to hear from God in the whispers. So this week, I want to encourage us all to think about times where we might not think about speaking to God, or times when we're by ourselves and we tend to focus on what we want to do more than what's going on in the outside world. Perhaps it's the newly rediscovered commute to work. Perhaps it's just taking the dog for a walk in Walsall Arboretum. Perhaps it's a half an hour gap you've now got before work starts, where you find yourself sitting quietly with a cup of tea. However it might work for each of us, my prayer is that God would speak to us in these quiet moments, through a still small voice, through a whisper, but we might learn to hear and to listen. I pray that we might be able to discover something new about God this week through these moments. God bless. See you soon.